And we are recording, Kim.
Okay, great. So welcome everybody, and this is the Wind Dodge Preserve or Farm and Raptors. I thought on this series I would try to lace in sort of some group of species with each of the walks. So this one is the raptors that you might see in this area, and a few that's Block Island specialties. So we'll try to go as we go along. We'll start with, as I always do, a map. I just love maps. You'll see first three pages are maps, but this is the trail that we'll be taking from Coonamus Road, which is just up from Warden's Pond. This is Dickens Farm Road that goes off like this. We just start down there, and then we go off into the Wind Dodge, and then we go through this other parcel. We'll do a little loop, and then out to this end of Dickens Farm Road. So, and I always actually like to include this old map. This is a section from the 1886, roughly, stonewall map. And it's always amazing to me how much of the lots are still there. So here's the same road, Coonamus Road, Dickens Farm Road, coming in, going around this wonderful swamp. Then it goes off to this, and this is the Wind Dodge parcel that we're going to be looking at. And the first, I think, yeah, here we go. So it equates to this area right here. What's in conservation right now are these three lots, 1, 2, 3. Actually, this is the first section that we'll be going through. Excuse me. Starting off, I just did a blow up of this. This old map, 1886, shows 3 buildings, and we'll be seeing 2 foundation ruins that are right here. And notice this one it's like a little flag, and I'm not sure this one is there. I'm pretty sure this is this one of these is what I think is the barn. So the maps are always great to look back and forth from today until over 100 years ago. This is what I started to talk about. The first part of this parcel for the beginning of the Wind Dodge Preserve area was the acquisition by the Black Island Conservancy of these lots, not this lot. And this was part, again, the 3 areas that became the basis of the Wind Dodge Preserve. And then that was somewhere between the mid 80s and early 90s. And then in 2007, they added conservation, BIC added this, Black Island Conservancy added this parcel and this parcel. And we're able to extend the walk, and this was the early plan, the sketch, so they continue from where they were over across this parcel, do a little loop around this very high spot, and then continue out to Dickens Farm Road. So that's how this area has evolved. But to start, you'll go out to Coonamus Road, the main road, sometimes called Cherry Tree Hill, and you'll go down Dickens Farm Road, which you will notice does not have a sign. It is a private road, and the owners of the road do not want it to have a sign, but it is the road that is right before Warden's Pond. So, and you can, from the road, you can look down and see the sign post for the Wind Dodge. So you can know right away you're in the right spot. If you go down a little bit more, you'll come to a point where you can either go off to the right, and that would continue on Dickens Farm Road. You could go straight to a private residence, or you could go to the left to the entry of the Wind Dodge Preserve. And that's Wind Dodge is Winfield Dodge, and one of the more current owners of the parcel, and that's how it's gotten its name. So off you go into it, and immediately you see this beautiful eastern red cedar right there welcoming you. If you were a Druid, you would surely believe this is the welcome person at the door. And you can tell it's a red cedar by a number of things, including its very straight bark, the form of its leaves or needles, and a good up close of the scaling on those. So this is a beautiful tree, and because it's been cleared around, it's really been able to really stretch its limbs. So if you keep going, you'll come to our first foundation ruin where there is a marker that identifies and sort of honors the Wind Dodge farm. And you're just going to walk around it. And so this is the marker up here that says Wind Dodge. And then we just came in this way, and we're going to go in like that. And when you go in, right, so we've just come around like this, and you're standing here and you're looking into this foundation ruins. So there's two of these that we'll be looking at. This one, I believe, now I haven't corroborated this with anybody because I'm not sure there's anybody around who actually knows anymore, but I believe this is the barn. And there's lots of reasons to think that. One, it's much bigger than the other foundation, which of course the barn would be bigger than the house. There are no foundations on this end. You would always have one end of the barn open so you could get your livestock in there, and you wouldn't want to be, it's just much easier to have this be a wooden front without the foundation. The other really interesting thing is you notice these two parallel rows of stones, really sunk in the ground. These would have been the supports, like the footing for support walls, because the barn would have been quite large, but you wouldn't want a lot of posts in the barn because you got to get your livestock in there. But this would allow for separation. You could have cows in one, a sow pig and her piglets in another, etc. Now this is exactly the same. I know two other barns still standing on Block Island have the same configuration with the two sets of stones as footings. One is the Martha Ball's barn at her house, which is probably not going to be around much longer. It's falling down, unfortunately. And the other is the barn at Redgate Farm, both of which were of this era, and both of them have this exact same configuration with the no foundation on one end and the two sets of supporting walls. So I feel like I'm on good ground saying this is the barn. So we're going to continue on. This is just a beautiful path. And you come to what I have never seen a curved stone wall before, a curved corner stone wall on Block Island. They almost are always right angles, very angular, and but this is just this beautiful curve of a stone wall. And if you spend any time on Block Island, you love stone walls, no matter what they look like and where they are. If you've listened to any of these other presentations, or you'll hear it today, I love pattern and texture and color in the landscape, and it's really what makes the place beautiful to me. There is a particularly beautiful stone in here. It's right here. It's very dark. It's you can't tell it from this. It's sparkling. It must have a lot of mica in it. It is kind of a sedimentary rock. A lot of these are granites, but it has a sort of, it gives a sense of horizontal striping, and that's where you get mica. It's one of the flat minerals that will lay down there. So that probably is what is contributing to the sparkle. And this rock has 3 different types of lichen on it, which is another great thing. There's the green lichen, there's black lichen, and there's this strain of sort of a rusty red lichen. It's very hard to identify lichens unless this is your sole specialty, but it's not hard to appreciate them, and I definitely do. And when you look at that red lichen up close, really up close, it takes on this, you see that this is its pattern. And there is a group of lichens, I would guess this is in it, that are called the tile lichens because their pieces fit together like a tile. So again, not without a graduate course in lichenology could I, probably not a word, by the way, I couldn't really identify exactly which lichens, but I can appreciate them. In the area, lots of these shad trees. I love shad. And it's one of our, these are becoming quite large on Block Island these days, in these years, I should say. It is one of our main coastal shrubs. They're easily identified because of their form, sort of a vase-like form, that multiple trunks, and very beautiful gray bark. And they too always have lichen on them, a very specific gray lichen that grows on the bark. And the lichen is not a dangerous. It doesn't hurt the organism. A lichen is a symbiotic association between a fungi and a green algae or a blue-green algae. And so the lichen is not getting its nutrients from the trees. It's getting its nutrients, it's getting its energy from the algae, which are producing sugars, which is not the case with fungi, and I won't go down that route. Again, texture all over the ground in this area. These first you have these wonderful green mosses. This is in a group known as the pincushion mosses. You can easily imagine why that would be. And this is a sphagnum moss. And sphagnum moss, just like you might see in your garden center or your own yard. And it comes, this is kind of it needs to green up. It needs some little sun and a little more moisture. It's kind of this particular reddish color. It's on some pretty harsh soil. So you'll see a little bit later some greener sphagnum sphagnum moss. So we've come to the second of the foundation ruins. This one is smaller. The center, the main part, is very square. And the reasons I believe that this is the house is because, first of all, it's very square. It has this, which is the remnants of a chimney right in the middle. And it's very typical for the capes of early New England. Would be square, and the chimney would be fairly large and go up through the middle of the house so that it could radiate the heat. You might have alternate separate fireplaces, but it would go right up through the middle of the house. So whenever you see that in a small cape with a chimney coming through the top of the roof, it's a good chance it's one of the older houses around. The other thing that is diagnostic is this is a set of steps. There's a few stones in there. You can tell they were steps. This would be going down into the cellar. And over here would be pretty typical of either an early addition where it wouldn't have the full foundation, and you're getting too big and you either have to put the kids out in the colder area or you got to move the kitchen out there. So all the things about this indicate that this was the house, not a barn. This is a same view. I couldn't get that view. That previous view was actually two photos meshed together. This is a panoramic photo and it's a little distorted. That's why I decided to do both. One is more accurate in terms of how it looks, but this is more accurate in terms of how the stones fit together. But anyways, great. These are, as I said, this is the Winfield Dodge Preserve, but it's believed that these are actually the homestead for the Dickens family originally, before the Dodges. And that information I found in the management agreement, the management plan that the Black Island Conservancy maintains for this property. So I think that's pretty well borne out, that this would have been the Dickens farm homestead a long time ago, back when they were showing it in the Stonewall map. So onward, we've just left, we've come up, and right now the part of the management is to mow all around these, the foundation ruins are back this way. We've come up from this way up toward, we're going this way. This is, behind this is the house ruins, beautiful little winterberry still hanging on to its berries. And if you come just a little bit further, another cedar tree at the other end of the parcel. So lots of great things in this area to look at besides the things I pointed out. Of course, birds. I'm always going to be pointing out birds. The robin was calling and calling and calling and posted up the day I happened to be there. And on the ground was a song sparrow. and a beautiful little bird that spends its time on the ground. It is the color of grass, and they're digging up seeds and little tiny insects, probably mostly seeds this time of year. Typical birds of the winter. Also, just again, the texture. This is the goldenrod seed heads. So a lot of these around the island right now. And this would have been a beautiful yellow blossom, narrow leaf goldenrod in the fall, but now it's just the seed heads. And as you get closer, it gets more intricate and more beautiful as you go. And then I say they're seed heads. These are the seeds right here. And they are in this. Once the seed head, this photo was taken a little earlier in the year, but these are the seeds in here, and then they go off just like a dandelion duff. And here's the seed for the next year's narrow leaf goldenrod. But again, when you look at something in minute detail, it gets often even more beautiful. And then a quick look at the of the winterberry that I pointed out. Or in the fall, this was bright red. This has faded quite a bit, and actually a lot of berries are gone. And this is a favorite food of robins, catbirds, any mockingbirds that might still be around. Will pluck these off, and then they'll fall to the ground. And meadow voles and mice and even song sparrows will eat these off of the ground. This we see in a lot of places on Block Island. This is the basil leaves. This is right on the ground, little mat of green. This is hawkweed, a mouse ear hawkweed, and they're very similar to the dandelion, but it's a hawkweed, and you can tell because the leaves are smooth. If this was a dandelion, the edge of the leaves would have been very scalloped. So, but again, it's the texture, it's the color, it's the patterns that I love so much. Same area, things a little bit, most of the winterberry and the hawkweed and the goldenrod, those are all native plants, the eastern red cedar. On our left, we have black knot. This is a fungi. You see it on a lot of the cherries, of the choke cherries around the island. And this is Japanese barberry, which is a known invasive species. And actually, there wasn't too much of it. There's one little section of it where I was looking. So we're trying, this is one of the things that the management plan tries to control for, because this invasive species can take over and displace the goldenrods and the other things. So this is our start of some of interleaving some of the bird species that we'll be seeing around in this area. The first thing we're going to talk about are the hawks. The hawks that like they can operate where it's a little bit shrubby. Trees, they can move around trees. Their wings tend to be more rounded and a little shorter, so and broader, which allows them to be able to fly a little more slowly. And not that they don't have a death plunge, they do, a little more slowly to get around trees and bushes. So the two that we have on Block Island year round are the Sharp-shinned and the Cooper's hawks. Now, they are very difficult to tell apart. And I put this up here. This is the cheat sheet, or the reference sheet, I should say, that I have in my bird banding room for when I get a Sharp-shinned or a Cooper's hawk. And if you look closely here, oops, wrong way. Oops, back. There we go. If you look here, it's trying to help. It says Cooper's hawk. Let's see, that both the juveniles and adults have the outer tail feather. So on the Cooper's hawk are shorter than the inner, whereas the outer tail feather on the Sharp-shinned are about the same length. Now this is helpful, but not always accurate, but this is a good diagram of it. We're showing this feather right here is the outer, it's shorter than the inner, whereas these are the same. So we'll see if that helps us. So this is showing, comparing the two juveniles and then comparing the two adults. You'll notice a few things. I as we go along. One is the striping on the Coopers is a little more sparse than the striping on the chest of the image of the Sharp-shinned. And the striping on the breast is vertical in an immature and more horizontal on the adult. So let's see how we do here. Let's see how we do here. So this is a photo, and that was taken by Nigel Grinley. This is either a Sharp-shinned or a Cooper's and a mourning dove sitting staring at each other. Now, the question is, which one is this based on what we just said? And I'll put up the photo, the thing again. So is its tail straight or rounded? It's pretty straight, and it's pretty small. The Cooper's hawk is much bigger than the Sharp-shinned, and this Sharp-shinned is about the same size as a mourning dove. So those two things tell me that it's a Sharp-shinned hawk in this photo. How about these? Sharp-shinned or Cooper's? Sparse on the breast, thicker on the breast. It's Cooper's and Sharp-shinned. We have two Coopers over here, excuse me, and a Sharp-shinned over here. And again, I have lots of help getting photos. I can't possibly get all the photos myself for birds, for hawks especially. And here's another great look of comparison. This is a Sharp-shinned hawk. This is a Cooper's hawk, and you'd say, "Wow, how could you mistake those?" Well, the fact is, the Sharp-shinned is a male, and in most of the raptors, the males are smaller than the females. So if you had a female Sharp-shinned and a male Cooper's, they would be about the same size, and it's very difficult to tell. But when you have a male Sharp-shinned and a female Coopers, you can really see the size difference. So that was the sole purpose of that photograph, is to compare a Sharp-shinned and a Cooper's hawk. And you can notice, you know, much more sparsely streaked on the Coopers and more densely streaked on the Sharp-shinned. So we'll leave those birds and we'll continue on our way. This is a path right that looks down, and this is looking down a pretty steep hill, and then it goes to like a meadow, and then it goes out to the road, and then you can see the ocean. So you have this great view looking across southwest corner of the island. But you also can tell that there's a very steep decline going down this hill. So this house and this part of the path has been on a ridge, and it's all going down into that large swamp that you pass if you continue down Dickens Farm Road. So it's a great view. It's kind of a better view as far as I'm concerned in the winter, because you can see a lot more. Okay, we're back to our maps just briefly. I won't spend quite as much time, but here we've just come in and we've gone through here, and we're about to go on to this other parcel. This parcel, we've come through here, and we're about to go on to the new, what we call the Syrician, and then that's right there. And it is quite a change in elevation very quickly. We've just come from the foundation ruins. You do this hairpin turn and you immediately start going down, 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 losing elevation. When you get down there, again, this is starting down, and you get down there, if you turn around and look to where you have come, you've come from up here, you've come down this way. But you start seeing a really interesting color pattern in the wintertime, especially. You see that beautiful sort of a mix of green and red and tawny. Of course, the tawny is mostly grasses. The green and the red are made up of two native plants. One is the common greenbriar, and the other is a rubus. I'm using rubus because I don't know which blackberry. There are probably about 20 different blackberry and huckleberry raspberry, not huckleberry, raspberry forms. These are pretty robust, but right now, no leaves, no berries, just a thick mesh of tangled briars. Both of them have a lot of thorns. You can't get through them easily, but they sure give an interesting color to the landscape. Now, there's a closer up look at of the common greenbrier, where you have the tangle and the leaves and the seeds, the berries. And this year, there's been a lot of berries on the greenbrier all around the island. Sometimes, some years you don't notice the berries, and they are good food for birds. So that is a good thing. There's plenty of food around right now. And then again, this in the summer, this is a big leathery dark green leaf, but in the winter it is curled up and is brown, but it sure adds some interesting texture to the whole mass of berries and leaves and tangle. And then this is the rubus, a little bit closer, this stalk, and we're getting ready for spring. This is an up-close picture I took of the bud that is just forming on the end of one of these blackberry or rubus canes. And again, when you see things tiny, they look amazing. Down here, where it's a little wetter, closer to the swamp, the sphagnum is a little greener, and it grows both on tufts of dirt that are wedged in among the stones, or even right on the stone itself. And with more rain, although we've had a fair amount, this will get even greener as the spring comes on, and the growing season for the sphagnum starts. And lots of these footprints. I was not alone. White-tailed deer are in the area, and need I say more? A lot of white-tailed deer on Black Island, and they love this area as well. So eventually you come to a part in the path where you can either go off to the right and stay on, quote, the main trail going towards Dickens Farm Road, or you can go off to the left going up the hill. So again, off to the right takes you, and there's a sign, it's well signed, main trail, go that way. Hill loop, go this way. And if you go, this is a wonderful hill. As you go up, as I went up, I noticed that even though it was a warm day, it was shady up there, and I found this wonderful frozen sort of frosty patch. And again, you look closer and closer, and it's more and more beautiful. So when you're up at this high point, this would be a good time to start looking over the fields for falcons. And this is a peregrine falcon. This was actually taken at the beach, but that's okay. It was on Block Island. And a falcon, unlike the hawks we just discussed, they spend a lot of time hunting in the open air. They have very long and pointy wings as opposed to the rounded wings. That allows them to fly really fast. And for the most part, they'll take their prey by going up and then flying down on what they call a stoop. But peregrine falcon is the largest of the falcons. Here it is. You can see it's a good handful when you've got your hand, a full 6-foot adult male hand around the legs and the tail of this bird, and we're holding it. The wing is being held out so you can see how pointy it is. This one is very white around the head. There's a lot of variation. This is more than likely a bird that nests and is from Greenland. So the farther north you go, the more white they are. So the ones that are nesting in Vermont and further south have more of a head color that's a little bit more like the gray on the back. Falcons, one of the ways you can tell besides the pointy wings are these sideburns. They have these wonderful stripes. And even though, you're seeing these at a fast or far range, if it's a perch bird, you can often see the sideburns and then at least get it to whether or not it's a falcon or a hawk. And in this case, then you start looking at the size. The peregrine falcon is a big bird. The next one down is a merlin, which is a medium-sized falcon. Again, you can see the sideburns here. They're just starting. This is a young bird. It's not, the sideburns on the merlin, not quite as broad as the ones relative to the face as the peregrine, but they have the same very pointy wing that makes them a falcon, a hunting falcon. And then the smallest falcon that we have out here on a regular basis is the American Kestrel. Again, you easily see the sideburns, and not in this one, you don't see how pointy the wings are. This is a beautiful little bird, but now we've got this is a woman's hand holding this. So compared to the large hand we saw holding the peregrine, you can see how much smaller the American Kestrel is. And there it is being released, and there it is on the wing. So, and again, beautiful view of its sideburns, and again, how small it is in the hand. American Kestrel. And there the three are together, more or less, at least together on the same screen: the peregrine, the merlin, and the kestrel. The kestrel used to nest on Block Island, and it may again. They like a cavity. So the last one I knew was nesting in the eaves of the Mason Hall, which is now the building that was halfway up High Street. That was a pharmacy, and now I believe it's an art studio. So the Mason's Hall, we'll just take it back to it. It used to be anyway, it was in the eaves there, and that was way back in the probably late 80s. But we keep putting up kestrel box in hopes that we'll get a nester again. So now we've come around the big loop, and if it is known for its great views, but the brush has grown up quite a bit. And if you're 5'2", you don't see much in the way of a great view up there, but you can dream about the falcons in the sky. So we've come down, we've gone around, and we're coming down the path. And if we go right, you would go back to the main trail and go back to where we have started. But you'll see right, and there you can see the other sign that went up, took us up the hill, so it's not that far. And you see a lot of green even this time of year, and that is Japanese honeysuckle leaves. They stay green most of the winter. And again, you get closer and closer. It's got this one even has a few berries on it, and they're quite beautiful. And honeysuckle berries always grow together, either closely associated, sometimes they're actually attached. So Japanese honeysuckle, an invasive plant, but beautiful nonetheless. And if you look down that way, along part of the brush is this sort of honeysuckle crawling up the stem of Highbush blueberry. And again, Highbush blueberry likes wet feet, so we're down at the swamp level, so it's a little bit moister than it is up by the homestead. And a blueberry has this wonderful sort of crooked, you don't really see it as well as sometimes, but the stalks, the trunks tend to be very crooked, and the branches off of them, so you get a sense. But they also have very distinctive color and striping, and they do also produce. They'll be one of the first things that will bloom in the spring. In a month, everything will be bright red with the buds of Highbush blueberry. And again, next to the Highbush blueberry, also mixed in was this. This is a choke cherry, but you notice the difference in the bark and the texture. The blueberry has this wonderful color, and the bark is very stripy, streaky, whereas the streaks in the Highbush and the choke cherry go in the opposite direction. So lots of things to notice. And of course, who can't look at a rock? If I go to the beach, I come home with a rock. I'm sure many of you do as well. And again, this is a granite boulder that's marking the edge of the path. But again, the pattern, look at these little crystals, sort of like teeth in here, standing right out. So we're not going back the way we came. We're going to go to the main trail to the left. And if you go a short distance, you come up to this gate, this sort of staggered gate, so that you can easily walk around it. And that's where you go through the gate and go through the gate, turn around. This is what you see. So this is the other side of the gate, looking back towards where we came from. And if you look towards Dickens Farm Road, this is where you go. It goes up, it's the easement that goes on that Syrickian lot right along this boundary, and goes straight out and joins Dickens Farm Road. So you'll come and this is what you'll see. You'll see a little sign that shows the direction for Dickens Farm. And if you want to learn more about the Dickens Farm, you can go to our Zoom from September 2020. And if you go out to Dickens Farm, you're going to most likely see marsh hawks. So marsh hawks are also birds of the open field, but unlike the falcons, they're not diving from above. They are floating. So they have these big, very arced, rounded, wonderful wings. And they will be hunting very low the fields of Dickens Farm. And in the open field, they like to hunt the dunes. But this is the bird of the area for me, is a marsh hawk. This is a female. And a little closer, if anybody doesn't know, that was Elise Lapham, the person who taught me to bird band, and that was in fact my favorite photo of her, holding the giant female marsh hawk with an oven mitt. And then this is a male marsh hawk, so grayer. The female is much more russet, has a beautiful, almost owl-like disc. The male has the same owl-like disc, but it's grayer, a little smaller because it's a raptor, and sometimes they're really beautiful, and they're known as the gray ghost. These two photos are from the internet, but I put them in here so you can see this is the typical flight that you will see. This dihedral, this sort of V-shaped, low to the ground, just lofting over the fields, looking for a bite to eat. So this, if you see this in a bird on Black Island, it more than likely is a marsh hawk or northern harrier. I should use the current term, northern harrier. No other hawk out here floats like this one. But if you're not sure, look for this white rump patch. So right at the upper rump is white. That again, that is very diagnostic of the marsh hawk. So get back to Dickens Farm Road. If you go, instead of going right out to Dickens Farm and look for marsh hawks, you can go, left of Dickens Farm, right to Dickens Farm Road, and you will go, if you want to learn more about that trail, go to our Zoom from April 22. This, you can either go out to the main road, Kunemis Road, or you can take the path that takes you to the pedestrian right away for the access to the shoreline. So two other walks can lead you at this point if you so desire. And in this area, these have been seen. Not so typical on Black Island, but more so recently. These are red-tailed hawks. This is a large hawk, probably the size of a marsh hawk, but straighter, and they're soaring. They're not floating, but they have very distinctive markings. And this one from underneath, you can see this is red. All right, this is an adult bird most likely because it's so light. This is a immature because it's so dark and still heavily streaked. But in all three of these, you can see what's called the belly band. This mark right here. This is right here, and then right here. These are the belly bands, and it's a very good field mark for red-tailed hawk, which we're seeing more and more often on Black Island. Still, I wouldn't call it a resident bird, but it's definitely, it's much more common. Not so common is the Mississippi kite. This is a very large bird. And I say that it's fish-eating birds. It will like snails and other things. This is a southern bird that does hunt along the shoreline. And increasing on Block Island and nesting since 2005 is the osprey. So those are raptors that both of these raptors were seen within probably 1,000 feet between where we come out on Dickens Farm Road and Coonamus Road. Both of these birds were seen. So not full-time residents, but definitely there occasionally. If when you came out and you didn't go left or right, you just turned around, this is what you would see. You can go back up the path and retrace your steps back to where we came. And here's just another view of it. This was taken the other morning, so anybody who's wishing they were on Block Island, this is what Block Island looked like yesterday. The sun was coming out a little bit and just hitting this little bit of grass, giving it that wonderful glow. Now the owls of Block Island. This is an owl that you can see in this area. This is a barn owl. This is not a live barn owl. This is a specimen in the Elizabeth Dickens bird collection of a barn owl. It was taken in but found blind in one eye. It was a telephone wire victim. In other words, it hit a wire and probably broke either its neck or its wing in 1943. But this is a beautiful specimen. It has that heart-shaped disc, face disc, and this wonderful speckling. For some reason, I always think it looks like sesame seeds. This is our resident owl on Block Island. They nest in holes in the bluffs, both at Clayhead and Black Rock at least. And you'll see these at night. And they will flash white because they're undersized, which is what you're most likely going to see is very white. So if you see a white bird flashing in your headlights at night, it's most likely a barn owl or resident owl. Not so resident, but a migrant almost every year is the saw-whet owl. Sometimes we have them in greater numbers than others. It's a very small owl. And probably, I guess you'd have to say the cutest of all the owls that we see on Block Island. Again, they do have the wonderful owl disc face, and but here you get a sense of how small this is. This is my hand, and I have a small hand, and this owl is tiny. Like all owls, or almost all owls, actually, not so true of the barn owl, they're feathered all the way down to their talons because most of them live, or many of them live where it's cold, and it helps maintain heat. And then every once in a while we get a snowy owl. This was actually taken last year. This is not a migrant per se, more of what they call an eruptive bird, a bird that will come when it needs to find food from what really wants to be in the Arctic or the northern states of the United States. But every once in a while we get them southerly, and some years in big numbers, others in small. This, as I say, was taken last year. There has been at least one seen this year. And first time I've ever seen a mature adult bald eagle, definitely a raptor. Again, eagles are showing up more and more on Block Island, usually immature, but there are 2 adult bald eagles on Block Island right now. And we know that there's 2. One seems to be hanging out in the Stockholm Pond area, and the other one seems to be hanging out in the southern Great Salt Pond area. Of course, there's, they can fly, they can be anywhere. But I was lucky enough to see 2 of these adults together with a group of Block Island school kids on our Christmas bird count this year. So we know that there are 2. And I always end with a bird list, a little mini checklist. As you can imagine, heavy on the raptors today, not so heavy on the land birds. And I really have to thank the photographers who took many of these photos. Nigel Grinley, Kathy Joyce, Kurt Milton, Kate Walkoff, all contributed photos to these. And the crew at the Biodiversity Research Institute, who has been manning I should say peopling a research station at the Lewis Dickens Farm area for raptors for over, I think it's about 10 years now. And a lot of the photos taken of birds, of raptors in the hand, are birds that they caught. And Nigel, me, Kathy, are lucky enough to be there and get the photos that I could use in this. So without them, I could not have done the raptor portion of this presentation. And oh yeah, photo. Oh yeah, is this a Cooper's hawk or a Sharpie? I'll let you think about that. I think probably Cooper's. So thank you, and I'll take questions or comments, or we can go back, or anything you'd like to do.
Oh, thanks, Kim. That was great. I'm sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself. I love the photos. Those close-ups of the berries and everything. I just had one question on, if everyone else has a question, but you were starting in your presentation, you were talking about the mowing around the foundations, that it's a part of the management plan for Black Island Conservancy. I think it's, I enjoy seeing that all mowed out, you know, because it's very, usually we don't see that. I was just curious, if there's a little history about that. Was it because of like the historical, like making it seem like the old homestead, or?
I wasn't actually that involved in that, but it was from the discussion. I think it is because of the homestead and trying to highlight the historical, you know, pattern on the land. So, and it's a great week now that at first the walkway that takes the trail that really connects that didn't open until around 2006, 2007. So for the first probably 10 years, it was just that area, and it ended. So I think I actually think, wow, what a great walk. Unlike many of ours are very closed in. If you had toddlers, you know, you just want to let them run in a place that was pretty contained. Or if you were rehabbing from a broken leg and you wanted a fairly easy walk, it's you know, flat, but get out in nature. It does have parking, a couple of parking spots right near the entry to that. Of course, most people do and should park out on Kunamis Road. It's just easier. It's a short walk from the main road into the path, but there are a couple of spots there. As there are also a couple of spots at Dickens Farm Preserve, and there are a couple of spots at the pedestrian access to the shoreline. So, but not a lot. Better to walk.
Hey there, Kim.
Hi.
It's Peter. Hi.
Oh, hi, Peter.
When I was much younger and spent more time out on the end of Long Island picking blueberries, low bush blueberries, you know, was a great joy. But we don't seem to have any on Block Island, and I've never understood why.
I don't really know either, other than you know, maybe they just didn't get here, because we do, and maybe blueberries need very acidic land, and some need more moisture than others. All the Highbush blueberries, and we have a lot of Highbush blueberries on the island.
Yes,
they all like to have their feet wet. So and they're all along the swamps and marshes, which tend to be more acidic. And they do produce a pretty nice berry. They're pretty small, and you'd be hard pressed to beat the birds to them, but they are there. Same with cranberries. There's a couple of places where I've known that cranberries are on Block Island, but I'm not sure they still are. And they need very acidic water and ground. So it could have to do with the lack of acidity. I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
It's wonderful to have y'all back doing this.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know how you publicized it. I only knew about it because my daughter sent me the link. So make sure you put it on out there.
Yeah, I know I sent a email blast last week, and I think also with the holiday on Monday, I didn't get a BI bulletin quick enough. So I'm glad you all found it, but yeah, we'll try to do better next time.
And it would be interesting to know how you did find out about whether or not it was from the email blast or from the bulletin board.
And as I say, from Morgan. From Morgan.
From
You heard it from
okay, word
Morgan.
of mouth.
Okay.
Yeah.
But otherwise I would not have known.
All right.
I saw it on the calendar.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, good.
That's great. That's
What
great.
I
A lot
saw
of people are
yesterday
looking-
was Kim with a veery. That's what I saw yesterday. You had a veery.
Oh, yeah.
That
Oh,
is one of the posts that our communications and person is doing on Instagram or Facebook.
Facebook,
Sorry,
yeah.
you can tell how good I am at social media.
Well, it's funny. I do those and then I never know when they're going to show up. So thanks for letting me know. It hit
Yeah.
hit the world.
Yeah, there's a new one out. It's not with Kim, but there was a dove key that landed on Beacon Hill Road and obviously got a little blown off course from a storm that was rescued. And Scott did a little video. Scott Cummings did just a video, and it just went on Instagram. And we did a little video before he returned to the ocean, which is really sweet to see up close. Looks like a little penguin. So
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a little off track, but anyway, so Kim, the next one we're going to do in February. I think it's February 15th or 18th. It's a Wednesday.
Right.
And do you want to
We're gonna
remind me what
be
the
at-
subject is?
Sure. We're going to be at the northwest corner of Saucon Pond and the Sandy Point area, and interleafing seals.
Great.
So we'll be doing seals and the areas of the dune, the Sandy Point, and the Saucon Pond.
Okay, great. Well, that's
Fabulous.
great. So unless there's any other questions, I think we'll sign off. But thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim.
Yep.
Thanks, Kim.
Nice to see everybody.
Yeah, nice to
Thank
see
you.
everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.